Hello everyone. So today is our next installment of the Summer Reading Club videos that we're doing. So today is going to be Slice of Life, and it's going to be a little different than usual because normally when we do these Slice of Life videos, we don't really talk about books necessarily because we have Must Read Mondays, but today I'm actually going to be talking to you about more books, which is exciting. So today I am going to be talking about a couple books that have road trips or feature road trips in them. Because usually in the summertime you get to go and travel and stuff, but since that's not necessarily the case this summer, you can read books that'll have that stuff in there for you. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started, and today the first book that I'm going to talk about is Paper Towns by John Green. It's on RBDigital in ebook and audiobook format, and Common Sense Media recommends it for ages 14 and up. So if you don't know this book, it is about a young man, teenager, named Quentin Jacobson, and he is in love with a girl named Margot Roth Spiegelman. He has always had some sort of infatuation with her and a crush on her from afar. They've never really talked before, but he's very romantically interested in her. Until one night, she climbs into his bedroom window, and they spend the entire night going out and enacting revenge on various people who Margot has decided deserve to have revenge seeked on them for various reasons. So they go out and they do all of this that one night, and then the next day Quentin, or Q as he is nicknamed, goes to school, and he realizes that Margot has mysteriously disappeared. And Margot kind of has a reputation for doing these sort of things and acting out, but so not that many people seem to care that much, but Q really does care, and he sort of starts to find a series of clues that may lead him to finding her, and so he goes on an adventure with friends to find Margot and figure out what's happened to her. And then as he's on this adventure, he's sort of starting to realize that maybe Margot isn't the person that he's always imagined her to be or pictured her to be, and might be someone entirely different that he doesn't completely understand. So that's all I'm going to tell you about that book. So reasons why I love it. So I read this book a while ago. I think it was like when the whole Fault in Our Stars craze was happening. I read like every John Green book that has been published at that time, and I still remember this book fairly well, which says a lot because I think The Fault in Our Stars came out when I was a freshman in high school, so I think like 2014. So it's been a while, but I remember this book very vividly and all of the characters. So that kind of says that they're pretty lasting. So the reason I think that they're lasting and that I like them a lot is because they're really smart characters. So John Green does an amazing job of, when he writes his books, of not treating teenagers like they are young children or cannot like comprehend the world around them. He makes them intelligent and articulate, and doesn't sort of write down to them or act like they are less mature than they are, but he also doesn't make them seem more mature than they are. He does a really good job at making teenagers be, thoughtful but still teenagers. So the things that you worry about as a teenager, the things that would upset you as a teenager, I feel like he does a good job at illustrating that and making it very realistic, which makes his characters very relatable, because you can, as a teenager, appreciate some of the things and some of the concerns that these characters have within the book. I think, too, that it brings a lot of strong lessons up about real life and being a teenager, so like growing up and coming into yourself and sort of trying to figure yourself out as you're going on, and what that means for you and how that can shape your life and the decisions you make in your life, which I appreciate seeing in a YA novel. Because, I think it's nice to have books that are based in the real world and talk about real issues. Like, fantasy books are always fun, and I love fantasy and I love sci-fi, but it's always nice to sort of be able to see situations that you could maybe find elements of in the real world that you deal with. So it's nice to see that, and John Green does that in his books. There are a lot of really funny interactions within the book. The characters all have really interesting and cool dynamics, and they're funny. Q is a fun main character to be following. And his friends are also all really funny, and I like them and their dynamic. And then, again, so I'm saying that they're all fun and I like his friends. The side characters are really strong in this book. Sometimes authors don't necessarily flesh out their side characters very well, but I think that John Green does a really good job at fleshing out his side characters and making them three-dimensional, even though they don't play as big a part in the main plot of the book, which I appreciate. So yeah, that's the first book. Very quick sort of to talk about, but it's kind of, what's good about it is the mystery, so I don't want to talk too much about it. But now that we are about to go into the second book, I wanted to give you the code that you need for this. So it's going to be Travel Well, and I wrote it down on notebook paper this time. There you go. I'm sorry that my handwriting is slanted, but that way you know how to spell. Okay, so that is going to be the code that you will put in for this video so we can check to see if you've watched it. So yeah, so the next book that I'm going to be talking about is The Disenchantments by Nina LaCour, and this is also on RBDigital, but it's only in audiobook format. And Common Sense Media doesn't have like an actual recommendation for this book, but based on this and other Nina LaCour books that they have rated and that I have also read, I would also say that this is probably safe for ages 14 and up, but just know that there isn't like an official rating, so that's up to your discretion. So this book, oh, I forgot to say about the last book that they're traveling from Florida to somewhere else. I don't want to say where because that's part of the mystery. But in this book, they're traveling from California to Oregon. So, this book starts off with Colby and his best friend Bev have major plans after they graduate high school. They want to graduate, obviously, and then they want to travel with Bev's band and go around Europe for a year and just kind of like, you know, experience the world. But Bev decides last minute that she's going to go to college instead of their original plan. And so Colby sort of has to decide what he wants to do, but he ends up staying and traveling with Bev's band and going around and doing what the original plan is and traveling through the Pacific Northwest, where they kind of just play in small restaurants and diners, just kind of milling about. And the band isn't actually that good, but they do it. But, you know, they're just traveling around, and as they travel, Colby's sort of trying to figure out his relationship with Bev, because it seems like it's getting very distant and it's not what it used to be, while also sort of trying to figure out what's going to be the next chapter in his own life as he goes on. Like, what is the next step now that he's graduated for him? Is it college? Is it something else? That's what he's trying to figure out. So, why I loved it. First off, I think Nina LaCour is just a very underrated author in general. I've read a couple of her books, and she does a phenomenal job at not only writing, because her writing is some of the most beautiful writing I've seen, and why I think her and Elizabeth Acevedo, and then I haven't talked about any of her books before yet, but Laini Taylor and Jandy Nelson, those are the four authors in YA that I think have the best writing. Like Jandy Nelson wrote my favorite book, but anyways, but I think those four authors have the best writing in YA. I think Nina LaCour is just like an unsung lyrical writing hero in the YA world. She does such a phenomenal job with all of her books. And they're always very introspective reads. Like, they're contemporary books that sort of have this concept of being kind of like just random fluffy romance, but there's so much more to all of them. And that is the case with this book, where it starts off and it just seems like it's going to be a fun road trip journey. And there is elements of that for sure, but it's a lot deeper than you would expect it to be. It's a lot more introspective than you would expect it to be. It's not just like a cute little romance and they're also traveling. It's like traveling and trying to figure out life while doing it. Yeah, so I think what I also like about it is it's very true to real life. So a lot of the questions that Colby is having is something that I think a lot of people experience when they graduate high school and they're trying to figure out what's best for them, like what's the next thing they're going to do. Much like Paper Towns is kind of about growing up, this book is also kind of about growing up. So it's like you're going on an actual road trip, but you're also kind of going on a metaphorical road trip through your life experiences and the things that you're going to be doing later on, which I think is cool. And I think, again, it's really relatable as someone who has graduated high school and is in college. I can say that some of the things that people are thinking about and talking about in these books are definitely things that I think people experience at some point in their life, of just being unsure of the world around them and like what's the next step. So that I think that's cool to see in books. It's more than just a romance or a relationship sort of book. It talks about a lot of other stuff, and again, the whole really focusing on like what's happening next and what is next for them and growing up. That seems to be more of the focus than just the relationship or romance. So it's like a mix of the two, which I think is good. Everyone is super fleshed out. I say this all the time, but I really like books that have really three-dimensional characters. And I think that's the case with these two picks, especially this one. I think Neela Kaur just does an excellent job at always fleshing out her characters and making them very interesting and real and flawed and beautiful, and it's just awesome to see in a YA book. I think like books like Neela Kaur's are what are books that should be picked up by people who are not necessarily the target audience, but just because they're so beautiful and introspective, I think that any person of any age could really get something out of these books. So yeah. And then again, just very beautiful writing. So it's nice to see, even in something that would be considered like a more fluffy novel than her typical books, it's still very beautiful. She still puts a lot of effort into it. So yeah, so those are the two books that have road trips in them. Be sure to tune in next week for more Summer Reading Club videos, and have a great day. Bye!